Behind every polished van life video on YouTube and every perfectly staged Instagram photo showing sunsets over mountain ranges and coffee brewing next to open van doors, an ugly reality has been building across the American van life community that the mainstream van life media has refused to acknowledge. The community has been quietly hemorrhaging members at rates that used van dealerships have been documenting, that mail forwarding services have been recording through cancellation patterns, and that community forums have been observing through the disappearance of longtime members who never announced their departure. The exit rate has crossed thresholds that nobody in the van life influencer economy predicted, and the underlying reasons behind the mass exit have nothing to do with the aesthetic experience the platforms have been selling for the past decade. The reasons involve financial destruction that no glamorized content ever mentioned, physical exhaustion that no aspirational video ever showed, community collapse that no Instagram photo ever captured, and government enforcement pressure that no van life YouTuber ever prepared their audiences to face. And the Vanlifers making the exit decisions have been reaching the conclusion that the movement they joined represents almost nothing of what they actually experienced once they arrived inside it. The gap between the marketed van life experience and the actual van life reality has grown to proportions that the community can no longer manage through the personal adjustments individual members historically made to keep the arrangement viable. Vanlifers arriving in the movement based on the content they consumed on social media platforms have been discovering within 12 to 18 months that the arrangement they signed up for bears little resemblance to what the content promised. The financial math does not work the way the content suggested. The daily lifestyle produces exhaustion that the aspirational videos never showed. The community dynamics carry drama and interpersonal complexity that the influencer accounts systematically excluded from their coverage. And the surrounding environment carries enforcement pressures, safety concerns, and infrastructure limitations that no video ever prepared newcomers to navigate. The current exit wave represents the accumulated response of a community that has finally reached the breaking point, where the reality versus marketing gap can no longer be sustained through individual willpower. What this video is about is the 8 reasons the American van life community has been quitting at record numbers through 2026, ranked from the least significant factor to the single most devastating one. Every one of these reasons contributes to the current exit pattern, and every one of them has been systematically excluded from the van life content that continues drawing new arrivals into the movement. The first 7 reasons on this list describe the visible pressures that individual van lifers can identify from personal experience, and the affected population can name most of them if asked directly. But the 8th reason on this list, which is actually the top position in importance, captures the underlying deception that has been driving the entire crisis. And it explains why the current exit wave will continue accelerating even as the platforms keep producing content that hides what is actually happening. The exit is documented, the pressures are identifiable, and the 8th reason changes how the entire van life information environment should be understood. Now, the 8th reason, at the least significant position on the list, is the gasoline price environment that has moved past what the van life budget can absorb without producing lifestyle-ending financial pressure. National average gasoline prices have crossed $4.10 per gallon through the summer of 2026, up 30% from the same period last year. California pump readings have crossed $5.64, with Los Angeles pumps documenting readings above $6 per gallon during peak periods. Hawaii pump readings have crossed $5.45. Michigan and Arizona have documented year-over-year increases exceeding 38%. For the van life population, which consumes gasoline at rates ordinary commuters never approach, the current price environment has produced annual fuel cost increases of $900 to $1,500 per household. A van lifer who drove 15,000 miles last year in a converted Ford Transit at 16 miles per gallon paid approximately $2,900 in gasoline. That same van lifer at current prices pays $3,800. The increase on a lifestyle budget that operates on thin margins to begin with has forced substantial portions of the community to reconsider whether continued participation remains financially possible. Now, the 7th reason is the vehicle reliability crisis that has transformed modern vans from the reliable platforms the previous decade of van life assumed into recall-plagued vehicles that require dealer network dependency at costs the community budget cannot absorb. 3.7 million American vehicles are currently under active park outside orders because manufacturers have determined they can catch fire while parked. Ford Transit vans from model year 2025 carry do not drive warnings for brake booster defects. Mercedes Sprinter vans from the 2019 through 2022 production window carry recall notices for diesel exhaust fluid pump fires that have destroyed 150,000 vehicles across the American market. Ram Pro Master vans from the 2014 through 2018 window carry recall notices for electrical fires that have destroyed 200,000 vehicles. Jeep Wrangler 4xe hybrids have gone through 3 separate failed recall attempts. And the repair infrastructure that would ordinarily support the community has consolidated around dealer networks that charge $200 per hour for service work and that maintain parts wait times of 6 to 8 weeks for common components. Vanlifers driving vehicles worth $20,000 to $40,000 have been discovering that a single major repair can consume their entire annual maintenance budget, and the community response has been to exit the arrangement rather than continue absorbing repair costs the arrangement cannot sustain. Now, the sixth reason is the cost environment across every dimension of van life that has escalated past what the community budget was designed to absorb, transforming the arrangement from an affordable escape from conventional housing costs into a lifestyle that costs almost as much as the housing it was supposed to replace. Truck stop overnight parking fees now range from $15 to $35 per night at locations that previously permitted free overnight parking. Commercial campground fees now routinely exceed $60 per night at destinations that used to charge half that amount. Insurance premiums on converted vans have risen 30 to 50% over the past 3 years, with specialty coverage for full-time van life arrangements pushing past $3,000 annually at multiple major carriers. Registration and inspection fees have escalated across most states as the tax base attempts to compensate for other revenue losses. Sprinter conversion companies now list professional builds at price points ranging from $80,000 to $150,000. Used Sprinter vans that community members could purchase for $15,000 3 years ago now list at $30,000 to $40,000 for equivalent condition. The cumulative annual cost of full-time van life has crossed $25,000 for most participants, which approaches the cost of traditional apartment living that the arrangement was supposed to provide an escape from. Now, the fifth reason is the government enforcement wave that has been criminalizing vehicle dwelling across American jurisdictions at rates that no other lifestyle community has faced during the current period. The Grants Pass Supreme Court decision in 2024 opened the door to enforcement actions that cities have been implementing at scales the affected community has been documenting. 47 cities and counting have passed anti-camping ordinances during the current enforcement cycle, criminalizing vehicle habitation on public streets, in commercial parking lots, and across other locations that van lifers previously used without concern. Federal land agencies have escalated dispersed camping enforcement to levels that community members have been documenting through fine records and citation patterns, with maximum federal penalties reaching $1,000 per violation and 12 months imprisonment for repeated waste violations under the federal regulations governing public land use. Private enforcement companies contracted by major retail chains have been issuing citations at rates that community forums have been recording, with documented $48 tickets in cities including Savannah, Georgia. The enforcement environment has produced a situation in which continued van life participation carries legal risk that the previous generation of van lifers never faced, and the risk has been driving exit decisions across the population that would otherwise have continued participation. The Walmart parking transformation deserves particular attention because it represents the most visible example of enforcement pressure that has driven exit decisions across the community. In 2010, approximately 78% of Walmart locations permitted overnight vehicle parking, providing the community with a nationwide network of free overnight locations that made mobile van life financially viable. By 2025, the proportion had fallen to approximately 50%, with more than 1,000 locations having banned overnight parking entirely. Automated license plate reader systems have proliferated across commercial parking lots, capturing the movements of vehicles that park at these locations and building databases that law enforcement, insurance companies, and other parties can access. The transformation has eliminated one of the primary infrastructure supports that made mass van life financially viable, and van lifers making exit decisions have been running the actual math on the current parking environment and reaching conclusions that the previous environment would not have produced. Now, the fourth reason is the community drama environment that has replaced the mutual support the movement historically promised. With the interpersonal complexity, political division, and social media performance pressure that individual van lifers spend substantial energy managing every day they remain in the community. Quartz site in the winter season now hosts population concentrations exceeding 100,000 temporary residents, transforming what was once a genuine desert experience into a temporary city with waste management problems, water access conflicts, and interpersonal disputes that the original community was never designed to handle. The Rubber Tramp rendezvous events have grown to sizes that longtime attendees describe as unmanageable. Popular dispersed camping locations have become concentrated enough to produce the noise levels, waste problems, and conflicts that undermine the appeal that originally drew van lifers to the arrangement. Instagram-famous locations have become tourist destinations with predictable visitor patterns, professional influencer traffic, and the performative behavior that arrives with cameras. Political conversations at gathering spots have grown progressively more difficult over the past 4 years, consuming emotional energy the van life arrangement was supposed to protect. The community that many van lifers joined seeking freedom and authentic connection has been delivering crowds, drama, and social media performance instead, and the gap has been producing exit decisions across the population that had originally sought community rather than the current substitute. The theft and safety concerns that concentrated gatherings produce have become an additional factor driving van lifers away from the community events that used to define the movement. Documented theft incidents at Quartz site have escalated in recent seasons, with vehicle break-ins, propane tank theft, and solar panel theft producing losses that affected van lifers document across community forums. Interpersonal violence at gathering events has been reported at rates that concern longtime community members with substance abuse issues, mental health crises, and interpersonal conflicts producing situations that require law enforcement intervention. The van lifers who arrive seeking safe community have been discovering that the concentrated gathering events carry the same risks that concentrated urban environments produce, and the discovery has been driving exit decisions among the population that came specifically to escape those risks. Now, the third reason is the loneliness and isolation that van lifers have been discovering to be the actual daily experience of the arrangement rather than the community and adventure the marketing content promised. Van life content on social media platforms shows van lifers surrounded by friends at community gatherings, meeting fascinating people at scenic overlooks, and building connections across their travels. The actual daily experience for most van lifers involves extended periods alone in remote locations, minimal genuine interpersonal contact between the concentrated gathering events, and the psychological toll that continuous solitude produces on human beings who evolved for community living. Van lifers arriving in the movement based on the community promise have been discovering that the community exists only at concentrated gathering events, which they may attend a few times per year, while the remaining 90% of the year involves the isolation the content never showed. The loneliness has been producing mental health decline that community forums have been documenting, with anxiety, depression, and dissociation appearing at rates that concentrated the exit wave among van lifers who came for community and found the opposite. The romantic image of the solo van lifer under the stars represents a small portion of the actual experience, and the actual experience produces psychological pressure the aspirational content never prepared arrivals to handle. The isolation problem compounds for van lifers who traveled to van life from established social networks that the arrangement forced them to leave behind. Friends from previous locations cannot maintain the same relationship depth across the geographic distance van life creates. Family relationships strain under the reduced contact that mobile living produces, with parents worrying, siblings feeling abandoned, and extended family losing track of the van lifer's location and situation over time. Romantic relationships within van life have documented failure rates that community observers have been tracking, with the confined space, the shared logistics, and the continuous proximity producing relationship pressure that traditional housing arrangements simply do not generate. And the connections that van lifers do form at gathering events tend to remain surface-level friendships rather than the deep community bonds the content promised, because the participants scatter across the country between events, and the digital communication that would ordinarily maintain the connection cannot replace the physical presence that produced the initial connection. The result is a lifestyle that promised community and delivered isolation, and the population experiencing the delivery has been exiting the arrangement at rates the community has never seen. Now, the second reason is the physical and mental toll that van life produces on human bodies, that the aspirational content systematically hid from prospective arrivals to the community. Van life requires sustained functioning in small spaces that produce back problems, joint issues, and repetitive stress injuries that build over months and years of participation. Van life requires exposure to temperature extremes that produce health consequences ordinary housing never delivers, with van lifers experiencing hypothermia risks in winter and heat stroke risks in summer that residential populations never face. Van life requires sleep in environments that rarely deliver quality rest, with noise, temperature fluctuation, and psychological hypervigilance producing cumulative sleep deprivation that degrades cognitive function over time. Van life requires physical labor at levels that ordinary residential populations avoid, with water hauling, waste management, generator maintenance, and vehicle repair consuming hours every week that the aspirational content never showed. And van life requires the sustained physical demand from populations that are typically not young. The average van lifer age has crossed 42 according to community surveys, and the aging demographic has been experiencing the physical toll at rates that force exit decisions the same population would not have needed to make 10 years earlier. The body breaks down faster in van life than in conventional housing, and the community has been reaching the recognition that the sustained physical cost cannot be maintained indefinitely. The healthcare access problem compounds the physical toll for van lifers who cannot maintain the medical relationships that ordinary residents rely on for preventive care and chronic condition management. Health insurance carriers require residential addresses that van lifers do not maintain, and the workarounds involving mail forwarding services do not always satisfy the underwriting requirements the carriers apply. Prescription refills require pharmacy relationships that mobile living disrupts, forcing van lifers to negotiate mail order arrangements that may not accommodate the medications they actually need. Preventive care appointments require geographic stability that van life eliminates, producing gaps in screening that allow treatable conditions to progress before detection. And emergency medical care in remote locations may require hours of driving to reach the nearest hospital, with outcomes that differ substantially from what urban residents experience for the same conditions. The healthcare gap compounds the physical toll by allowing manageable conditions to become serious, and the combination has been producing health-driven exit decisions among van lifers whose bodies have reached the point where continued participation carries medical risks the arrangement cannot support. Now, the first reason, the single most devastating factor behind the current exit wave, is the systematic gap between the van life that has been marketed on social media platforms and the van life that new arrivals actually experience once they commit to the arrangement. The van life that the Instagram accounts show is a curated selection of the best moments from the most photogenic locations, filtered through professional photography and edited to remove every element that would undermine the aspirational appeal. The van life that new arrivals experience involves the average moments in the ordinary locations, without professional photography, without editing, and without the ability to remove the elements that make the daily reality substantially harder than the marketing suggested. The gap between the two experiences produces a form of psychological betrayal that arrivals have been describing consistently across community forums. Vanlifers arrive expecting the sunsets and the coffee and the freedom that the content promised, and they encounter the reality of parking anxiety, financial pressure, physical exhaustion, community drama, isolation, government enforcement, and the accumulated pressure this video has been describing. The disconnect between expectation and reality is not a minor adjustment issue that new arrivals process through the ordinary settling-in period. The disconnect is a fundamental deception that the platforms and the industry have been perpetrating for a decade, and the accumulated victims of that deception have finally reached the scale where their exits are producing the community-wide transformation this video has been describing. The deception dimension deserves further attention because it explains why the current exit wave will continue accelerating rather than resolving through the personal adjustments the community historically made. The gap between the marketed van life and the actual van life has been growing rather than shrinking, because the platforms have every incentive to continue emphasizing the aspirational content that drives engagement while the underlying reality continues deteriorating. The gap between the marketed freedom and the actual constraints has been growing because the enforcement environment continues tightening while the content continues showing the previous freedom that no longer exists. The gap between the marketed community and the actual isolation has been growing because the community drama continues intensifying while the content continues showing the earlier community that has already collapsed. Every van lifer who arrives based on current content experiences a larger gap between expectation and reality than the previous cohort experienced, and the accumulating disillusionment is producing exit rates the movement has not previously seen. The deception is not slowing down. The reality is not improving, and the exit wave will continue accelerating because the underlying dynamics driving it continue expanding. The professional photography and editing that produces the van life content deserves particular examination because it captures the mechanism through which the deception operates at scale. Every photograph appearing on the van life accounts represents a moment selected from hundreds or thousands of alternative moments that never make the feed. Every location shown represents the most photogenic angle from a physical space that includes ordinary elements the frame excludes. Every sunset represents the peak minutes of a day that included 8 hours of driving to reach that particular overlook. Every coffee brewing scene represents the aesthetic minute of a morning that included 2 hours of previous logistics involving water hauling, power management, and the ordinary maintenance the content never shows. The van lifer producing the content knows the ratio between the shown minute and the hidden hours, but the audience consuming the content sees only the shown minute and interprets the interpretation as representative of the ongoing experience. The interpretive error is not the audience's fault. It reflects the fundamental limitation of visual media that cannot depict what is not photographed, combined with the platform incentives that reward the most aesthetic moments over the most representative ones. The deception is structural, and the structure has been producing the exit wave at the scales this video has been describing. Now put those 8 reasons together and you have the picture. Gasoline prices past what the budget can absorb. Vehicle reliability crisis producing repair costs the community cannot sustain. Total cost environment approaching conventional apartment living. Government enforcement wave criminalizing vehicle dwelling. Community drama replacing the mutual support the movement promised. Loneliness replacing the connection the content marketed. Physical and mental toll on aging bodies the content never showed. And the systematic gap between marketed van life and actual van life driving the entire wave. The van lifers executing the current exits are not participating in a personal failure. They are responding rationally to an environment that has become unsustainable across financial, physical, community, and psychological dimensions simultaneously. The platforms continue promoting lifestyle content that bears no relationship to the actual arrangement. The industries continue selling infrastructure at price points the affected communities cannot sustain, and the enforcement environment continues criminalizing the arrangement. The platforms are still recruiting new arrivals into. The exit wave will continue accelerating because every one of these pressures continues expanding, and the institutional actors that would ordinarily respond have every incentive to maintain the current environment. If this reached you tonight, subscribe, share it with anybody currently in the van life community, currently considering an exit, or currently considering entering the movement based on the aspirational content still flowing across the platforms. The exit is real, the reasons are documented, and the American van life community deserves accurate information about what the arrangement has actually become.